It looks like we're live, and it is 10 o'clock. Okay, my name is Ivan Rakelin. I'm here with Mickey Whithoff. For those that are listening in, you can tune in to some of the free speech platforms that I'm pushing this out to. Getter, I think some of the commie platforms are also receiving this, like Fakebook and CommieTube. But I'm here today on Ashley Babbitt's birthday, October 10th at 10 o'clock. And there's two reasons why we're out here. I'm here with Ashley Babbitt's mother, Mickey Whithoff. And it's essentially a demand notice that you're going to speak on behalf of your daughter, but I think collectively we speak on behalf of those early critical thinkers that saw what occurred in 2020 and that are also demanding the following of the next Speaker of the House. So let me kind of begin with the following. The purpose of this is to go back to in November of 2022. I wrote a Substack explaining what I thought was the best summary of what we need a strong Speaker of the House to do in order to bring our country back to some semblance of normalcy. Number one was to essentially reject the CCP's systematic destruction of the U.S. economy on several fronts facilitated by this Biden residency, the failed Pence vice presidency, as he was on the CCP, I call it 19 task force. Now I get it. The former failed Speaker of the House at this time, Kevin McCarthy, tried to create a select committee on the CCP. What has that committee done so far as it applies to rejecting the Chinese takeover, not only the West, but the United States in particular? I suspect absolutely nothing. So our next Speaker of the House must do something much more aggressive. And that comes from, if you look at the background, there's no institution on this planet that is in a position to allocate between $6 and $7 trillion to any budget. That is power. That is power that no other institution, no country on this planet has. So why not use that power, right, to go after China takeover? And then our other threats, namely Iran. Recently we hear in the news, right? What does this regime do instead? They fund them to conduct terrorist activity, not only against our allies, but more importantly against American citizens. So that is unacceptable. Number two, the medical tyranny component. Has this Congress under McCarthy done anything as it applies to creating consequences for Big Pharma and every single brand ambassador that was participating in the medical tyranny? We still haven't gotten to the point where we've had consequences for this acting fake Secretary Austin, where he was the one that promulgated these illegal mandates. We're going to get to that point, and that's what we're demanding of this next Speaker of the House do. And hopefully we have more gusto from the Congressman Brad Wenstrups of the world that are currently spearheading the COVID Select Committee. Next up, censorship. What has this House done in terms of funding and consequences for the individuals and institutions that were part of the big tech censorship? Well, they had a few hearings, right? The judiciary hearing, the weaponization hearings, the oversight hearings. We were on most of them, right?
Yep.
What have they done?
Talked a lot.
They talked a lot. They made some sounds. Sometimes they made some noises
Mm-hmm.
for people to look at and consume. At the end of the day, our First Amendment is still being completely violated, decimated across all big tech, all big media. Luckily, we have platforms such as Getter, Truth, Telegram, Rumble that allow a little bit of free speech to occur, but there needs to be more. There needs to be massive consequences. Number four, this is where I think this is the most important component of what we need to focus our attention on with the next Speaker of the House, and that is what really happened on January 6th. Now, I've been talking throughout the country of my research and assessment. The Oversight Subcommittee on the House Administration Committee has done some stuff, but they haven't really actually done anything. But we're trying to get and motivate them to do so. Problem is that the former Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, his buddy, Brian Stile, who chairs that committee on House Administration, he is tethered to Paul Ryan, which absolutely does not want to get to the truth of January 6th, because they were probably complicit in facilitating what happened on January 6th. And I want to give you an opportunity, Mickey, thanks for coming out here, to basically explain from your perspective as Ashley's mom, what do you think Ashley would have demanded of a Speaker of the House? Now, since we're kind of figuring out who the next speaker is, who do you want? I guess
Well,
to see in a speakership.
we need America First candidates. You know, we need people that are going to do things in the building across the street, in the building behind us that are going to have consequences. Like you said, you know, we sit in on these hearings, but they don't even listen to each other. So many times in these hearings, you see people come in, they sit down, they say what they have to say, and they leave. They don't listen to each other. They don't listen to the other side, and they don't try to come to a compromise in any way. Everybody talks and yells. Maybe they have mean speech in there, and then they go about their day. You know, the reason they don't want to get to the bottom of what happened on January 6th is because the people in this city would be found complicit. The same videos that would exonerate our people that are in jail right now, our political prisoners, would implicate the powers that be in this city. And the corruption goes so deep that it is so hard to climb this uphill battle. But we need American people to be a voice, to have something to say, hey, you know, if those 41,000 hours can't be seen, then we need to know why, because it's our footage. It was paid for with our equipment. Our tax dollars paid for the people to even monitor it. The lackadaisical approach they have that, you know, the 41,000 hours would be dangerous to the security. Well, you couldn't flub the security any more than it was flubbed on January 6th. So I hope that when we see that, you know, everything has been implemented to improve that security system. And I would say that they need to start with keeping their people on post awake. You know, we tried to go in the Cannon building the other day, and we had to wake up the police officer to run our stuff through the belt, literally leaning against the wall, taking a nap on duty. So, you know, if you want to talk about security on the Capitol grounds and in the city of DC, let's keep our police awake. That's a step in the right direction. We absolutely need an investigation into the events of January 6th. We need to know what happens. It's America's right to know what happened. You know, there are so many people on upper levels that were guilty in the orchestration and the calligraphy or the choreographing of the days and the events of January 6th. You know, Ashley is the only person to ever be shot inside the Capitol, and yet they won't let anybody say her name in the federal courthouse in these January 6 cases. And we sit in the federal courthouses and watch these kangaroo courts and these judges with their predetermined decisions before they even come in and take a seat on the bench. The men in these courtrooms are being tried for the day of January 6, much like Ashley was. She was tried, executed right on the spot, and then denied rendering of honors simply for her presence in the Capitol on January 6. It's the same thing that's happening across the street in the federal courthouse. You come in with January 6 offenses, you will be found guilty. The prosecutors work hand in hand with the FBI. They've lied on stand, and they very much, they come in the courtroom, and it's going to be a slam dunk guilty. These prosecutors don't even have to try that hard. They roll out of bed, barely brush their hair, show up, guilty, guilty, guilty. And this is with all of them. All of them. We need you know, lawyers to fight harder. We need judges to be more fair. We need equitable distribution of justice. These are excessive and duplicitous charges on these men. And you know, like Jamal Bowman pulling the fire alarm, that was an obstruction of an official proceeding. He has no charges, no consequences, while we have American citizens that showed up to redress their government on January 6th that still sit in jail. Some of them have been sentenced, some of them are awaiting trial. They have up to 7.5 years. Enrique Tarrio, I know everybody probably knows the chairman of the Proud Boys. He got 22 years for seditious conspiracy. He wasn't even in the city. Edward Vallejo, a member of the Oath Keepers, old 73-year-old man, is in jail for 3 years, and he didn't enter the city. He was on the other side of the river in Virginia. So we need an investigation into the actual happenings of January 6th. This is Tammy Perryman. Her husband sits behind jail waiting for, you know, his day in court. We know the outcome of that. You know, Tammy Perryman joins us in the Eagle's Nest. We've been in D.C. for the last year. We hold a vigil outside the D.C. jail every single night for over 400 days to try to draw attention to the unconstitutional treatment of American citizens, the inhumane treatment of American citizens, and the squashing of our Constitution before our eyes every single day in the federal courthouse. So we need a speaker that will pay attention to that. We need a speaker that will pay attention to the needs of the American people and not sit in the elite castle on the hill, not knowing what a gallon of gas costs, or the work situation, the inflated, employment history, everything they say is going right for this country. It's big lies. We live in a city, this capital city of the United States. We're faced with people that have a stronger First Amendment with us if they're on the left. You know, we had a march for Palestinians, support Palestinians through this city yesterday. So And people do have a right to exercise their First Amendment, but with open borders, how the hell do we get so many Palestine supporters in here? There are sleeper cells in this country that are going to be a problem soon. We need to pay attention to our open borders and everything that comes with it.
So we're 1,000 days in. We're how many? 1,004,
1007.
1,007 days. I was thinking about it this morning. I'm not sure if that was the amount of days. It was maybe 900 days where the Iranian hostages were kept by Jimmy Carter's failed presidency until Ronald Reagan came in and actually released those prisoners. We're beyond that time frame, and we're actually here in our own country. Meanwhile, no one's doing anything because the FBI is using their censorship scheme to intimidate everybody. And then recently, this last week, they went ahead and said, oh, we're going to go after anybody that's questioning our legitimacy, which is, that's me. They're totally corrupt and illegitimate. So come after me, please.
Right, and this is the same thing that, that all the dictators of other countries did. If you dare question your government, Ashley should be celebrating her 38th birthday today, and instead she was shot and killed by a government that won't launch an investigation into her murder.
And I heard in Los Angeles earlier today, 50 people were killed. I think 48 of them were innocent bystanders by the FBI's raid on an apartment complex to go after 2 suspects that they were going after. Just another example of complete illegitimate, lawless domestic terrorist activity. I got to ask you a question. In February, I think it was, what day did you meet with Speaker McCarthy?
I met with him in March. I believe it was March 24th, after he had said that Michael Byrd was just doing his job, and I asked him if he had even seen the video, and he said no, and then he promised he would watch it, and I've heard nothing from him since, so I can only assume that he did not watch it, or that he feels that it's all right for Capitol Police officers to shoot American citizens, unarmed American citizens, with no warning.
So in January, he promised Matt Gaetz and the rest of the conference a few things, which he failed on. He promised you personally on doing a few things as it relates to Ashley Babbitt. He has absolutely done nothing. So let's talk about the candidates that are coming up on speakership. Kevin McCarthy, is, as of last 24, 48 hours, has expressed that he would be willing to go back as the Speaker of the House. Is there anything that he's done, anything whatsoever, that would warrant one person to vote for him?
Well, I don't know everything he has done. I more know what he hasn't done. But I feel like, once politicians lie to you bold-facedly, I don't think that anything is going to change with that. I don't think that he is going to suddenly decide, oh, well, let me do what I said I was going to do. I mean, he broke his promises once, he'll break them again. But we see so many times that that's the standard operating procedure in D.C. is, they tell you what you want to hear, and once you're out the door, they do nothing.
Okay, so I'm going to translate it this way for me. If anybody votes for Kevin McCarthy on any vote that comes public, and I'm probably going to find out what the voting is going to be internally, we're going to go ahead and make sure to make your life miserable during the primary. And your primaries are coming up, I don't know, January. So we're only a couple of months out. Number 2, what about Steve Scalise?
I don't really know that much about Steve Scalise.
I'll talk about him a little bit.
You talk about him, Ivan.
So Steve Scalise, just a little bit of framework on him. He used to be the, now he's the majority leader, and he was voted in unanimously by the conference to be the majority leader. But he represents the cowardly, toxic, feckless establishment of essentially the entire uniparty system. And the way that I basically determine that that's the case is because he has said absolutely nothing as it applies to January 6th. He said absolutely nothing about the illegally conducted and illegally certified 2020 election. He said absolutely nothing about Big Pharma's takeover of the tyrannical, the medical tyranny. All the subjects that we just laid out that a Speaker of the House should have, he is in that category of people that has done absolutely nothing to fight back against the lawlessness, the censorship, everything, you name it. So for me, that's a disqualifier completely.
A completely disqualifier. Who
So
do
else
you
is
like?
running?
Who do you like, Ivan?
There's another person running, Jim Jordan. Let's go through Jim Jordan. He sits on the Judiciary Committee as a chairman. He also is the Subcommittee on Weaponization chairman. Now, I'm going to look at it, I'm going to say it politely, and I think most people can read through the lines as I explain this. If you pull away Jim Jordan as the basically institutional knowledge, the most proactive member of Congress that knows who to go after within the DOJ, within the weaponized federal executive branch, even though he needs to do much more. If you take him from that role, what does that do to the DOJ, and the FBI.
Well,
That means that's another opportunity for them to continue their lawless path.
well, they
So if we
continue.
pull Jim Jordan from that role, he needs to be given more power, authority, and pressure from someone that will give him that top cover so that he can escalate against the DOJ, is my opinion.
Well, when the first committee hearing I sat in on, he talked about the power of subpoena. You know, and yet we watched Merrick Garland sit and lie before Congress, and he was not issued a set of handcuffs. And we watched former police chief Son say that he absolutely talked to Nancy Pelosi 3 times on January 6th. She said she had no communication with him. We need to subpoena Nancy Pelosi. We need to
Yes.
subpoena her communications, her records, which I'm guessing, as you pointed out the other day when she had to move out of the Speaker's office, that evidence was probably getting destroyed as we speak. But we need to know what Nancy Pelosi was up to that day. And I think that Jim Jordan talks big about the power of the subpoena, but I've yet to see it in play.
So, which leads to our question. Who is in the best position within this entire country that could essentially castrate the deep state, as I like to call it? The
Well, I know
DOJ, DHS?
you've been long talking about Donald Trump in the position of Speaker of the House, and I think that, you know, Donald Trump would be an amazing asset to this government wherever he could get in, but I don't see anybody in this city working with him. You know, you have a couple people in Congress that'll still say they support Donald Trump and his ideas, but it's becoming less and less popular, and people bow to the pressure. You know, we now have Marjorie Taylor Greene saying people don't need to see the 41,000 hours of footage because sedition hunters might arrest more American citizens. Well, American citizens continue to be arrested. Sedition hunters are coming after us whether we see all the 41,000 hours or not. So we absolutely have a right to see that. You know, we need to remember that on January 6th, the still sitting president of the United States of America said, come to D.C. Our patriots, our citizens came to the United States, to the Capitol of the United States, and they marched and tried to redress their grievances with their government, and it was mostly peaceful until the Capitol Police attacked unarmed American citizens and called in reinforcements to make that even stronger. You know, we have the death of Ashley Babbitt, Roseanne Boylan, Kevin Greason, Benjamin Phillips, and Officer Brian Sicknick was treated poorly that day too. Instead of getting him medical help, they told him to go lay down, and he was suffering a series of strokes, and he became irreparable and passed away the next day. I believe his blood is on the Capitol Police's hands. I believe we absolutely need an investigation into what happened that day. As many people say, well, it's two and a half years ago, we need to get over it and move on. We absolutely cannot get over it and move on. Our government lied to us, they beat us, they crushed us, and they threw American citizens in jail for decades.
Now, when you met with Kevin McCarthy, did you give him something?
I did. I gave him this.
And what is that?
Y'all are going to have to zoom in. It is a list of people that were killed in nefarious behavior from a lot of the Capitol Police officers and where they can find it, and a list of suicides, and you know, people throwing other people off of roofs, and it's absolute evidence that people could look into and see it if they so desired. But as you can tell by all the invitations that you sent out to every single member of Congress, and I know that it's a busy news day, and I know that the world's on fire in the Middle East, but this is our country, and we need to pay attention to what's going on in it. We need people that give a shit. I don't know how else to put it.
I agree with you. So let me kind of close with this. For me personally, I want to hear your perspective too, because this is the first time we're talking about this here. This is what I would like to see in our next Speaker of the House. It's somebody that is unleveraged, untethered, but that has the necessary influence and leverage over enough members of this body to force immediate consequential change. And so let's take a look here. The next Speaker of the House has an opportunity to appoint the next Sergeant at Arms, okay? On January 3rd, which is in about 90 days, right? Or so, 100 days. On January 3rd is when the Capitol Police Board chairmanship switches from the Senate Sergeant at Arms over there, Ms. Gibson, over to the House Sergeant at Arms, whoever that's going to be. And that Sergeant at Arms, I would like to see maybe a Kash Patel. Because then Kash Patel can go ahead and decide, you know what, Capitol Police Chief, now that I'm the chairman of the Capitol Police Board, you're fired. And guess what else? General Counsel Thomas DeBias, you're fired as well. Now we're going to go ahead and look through all your NDAs that you wrote up, the leave without pay agreement that you did between Manger and Yogananda Pittman. And then we're going to pull all data as it relates to not only the CCTV footage, we're going to release everything, all the IG complaints, all the IG reports as it relates to the cover-up of the Fedsurrection coup. We're then going to go ahead and look at all the communications between the Capitol Police Board and Nancy Pelosi and Yogananda Pittman and Thomas Tobias and Alexandra Pelosi and Michael Voss and John Sullivan and Ray Epps, also Chris Ray Epps, right? All these people. Now that I think about it, I am an attorney. I wouldn't mind serving under Kash Patel to be the general counsel.
There you go.
Of the Capitol
That would be
Police,
amazing.
and I would do it as a pro bono activity. And I would only do it for a few weeks.
You heard it here first, America.
I would do it for a few weeks. And so before I become the Secretary of Retribution on January 20th of 2025, I think the best use of my time over the next year, 14, 15 months, and not even that, just for a few months as we release the 41,000 hours, as we release the documents, since no J6 defendant has access via FOIA to everything related to their criminal referral. For example, your husband, if he was on the Capitol grounds, the initial contact would have been, hey, a Capitol Police officer would have written him up for a transgression, whatever that may have been, allegedly. And then that initial fact pattern worked its way up to the general counsel for them to consult with Pittman, Pelosi, and the Democrat crew to say, hey, what should we charge this person? Well, let's take a look at his social media and see how supportive he is of Trump and then how close he is with Trump. The higher that goes, the more we're going to charge him, right? That's literally what they did.
That is
and
literally
we're going to
what they did.
expose all of that.
They
That's
charge
what
people
we
for
need
thought
a Speaker
crimes.
of the House to do. Problem is, Kevin McCarthy was in on it that day because he didn't do anything, as evidenced by the last, 10 months, 9 months of speakership. Has Jim Jordan done anything from his perch as Judiciary Chairman? I don't see anything substantive. Maybe someone can provide that to me.
Well, we'd love to
And
see it.
I don't have any beef on Jim Jordan. But he has not exhibited the maximal authority that the rules of the House has provided him. You said no handcuffs for Chris Wray.
No handcuffs for
A.G.
Merrick Garland. Right.
But what happens to Steve Bannon when he didn't even do half of what they did?
Right.
They give him the SWAT approach,
exactly,
right?
Exactly.
They SWAT him. How about we move towards then taking the House Sergeant at Arms with the new Speaker, and this new House Sergeant at Arms that chairs the Capitol Police Board then recruits, several thousand of those military service members that left the military recently because of the illegal shots, particularly those from Tier 1 units that have more training and capability than all, let's say, FBLI's HRT unit down here at Quantico, and give them the necessary rules of engagement authority to autocorrect the lawlessness of the DOJ, DHS, DOD. And you know what rules of engagement I'm thinking of, but we'll stop there.
Yep.
And then I think we can quickly autocorrect this country. Now here's the last part. How do we get there? Well, I came up with a list here. In order to become the Speaker of the House,
We know he did. We knew he would have a list.
they want to make lists? I got my own lists. So we take a look at a nice little list of about, 150 or so people of the 222 Republican Conference, 222 members of the Republican Conference. There's 218 are required to become the Speaker. Well, a lot of people are saying, like, your Hannitys of the world that work for Paul Ryan, your Mark Levin that work for Paul Ryan, and they're parroting the statement, oh, Trump can't get enough votes to be the Speaker. Well, let's take a look. 150 people he endorsed to become representatives in the House. That's a pretty good start, in my opinion. Imagine we go back to January, remember how people stood up and nominated their beloved Kevin McCarthy for a few-minute speech, and then they nominated Byron Donalds or whoever it may be, right? Jim Jordan. Remember those speeches?
Vaguely.
It educated a lot of people uncensored, didn't it? The FBI couldn't censor C-SPAN, could they? Imagine all 150 members of Congress that were endorsed by Trump conduct 150 iterations of voting for the Speaker. And in that period of time, explain what the DOJ, DHS, DOD, the illegitimate regime right now has done over the last 9 years. 5 minutes times 150. That's a lot of airtime that can be used to exonerate patriots, and Trump being the avatar, from the illegal spying on Carter Page with the illegal Crossfire Hurricane spying on a candidacy for president. Then moving it on from the Mueller investigation. It all goes back to the DOJ and the FBI. So
Oh.
imagine 150 votes. If we had 15 and it took 5 days, 150 votes would be what? About 50 days. So let's use now through November 17th at the minimum as the opportunity to educate the country of what just happened to them, that the FBI coerced them through censorship and manipulation, FBI field office in San Francisco, headquarters, and then big tech, to accept these jabs, to basically go from COVID religion to Ukraine religion to climate religion, and now what are we starting again? Since Ukraine funding is not in vogue with the American people and there's enough pushback to remove a Speaker of the House, the next religion that they're pushing us towards is what? Israeli religion, right? And this is all coming from whom? Our national security apparatus. We need to basically educate. This is what I'm getting at. We need to educate the country, and everybody's going to watch it if Speaker Trump is in play. And I don't care if he wins or loses. That process in and of itself exonerates all of us. While each member of the 150 stands up and says, Matt Gaetz stands up for 5 minutes and nominates Trump or whoever, and then expresses that. It's uncensored.
What we need though, Ivan, is American citizens that want to be educated. You know, we need people that want to be educated.
This will force the conversation, because the media will have to cover it. I mean, it's newsworthy. Imagine there's no speaker until November 17th, and that's when November 17th is when the current government will shut down, because the continuing resolution only lasts through November 17th. So then I've said closing and lastly, but this is the last very thing.
Question?
Before we go to questions, let's take a look here. So in October through November, I recommend 150 votes, where each time that there's a vote, there's an exoneration, an exposure of the corruption that has occurred. Remember, this is going to be prime time every time, right? The whole day. So a lot of people are going to watch it. And then now we have a free speech Twitter, which we really didn't have in January at that point. It's a little bit more free now.
A little bit.
Then, November, December, this new speaker can really focus in on maybe a Nuremberg 2.0 for what happened with the COVID stuff, right? Because by then, I'm hoping Elon Musk releases Fauci files finally, right? And then January 3rd, we talked about the Capitol Police Board chairmanship changes. And that's when all of it comes out and is exposed, so that your husband is in a much stronger position. I don't know when his...
We don't even have trial.
You don't even have a trial date. That's when I think we're going to get to a point where the American public is going to have to demand that the J6 political hostages are going to have to be pulled out. And this new speaker must order...
I hope the American people demand something at some time.
Yeah, and then the next speaker needs to order Jim Comer and say, hey, no funding to D.C. until they release the political hostages, right? Because of the home rule.
The thing is, there are so many people in this country that are so brainwashed because the mainstream media continues to press forward the narrative. They still talk about Americans killing Capitol Police officers that day, which did not happen. But they talk about it in congressional hearings with no correction. They talk about it in the federal courthouse with no correction. And the American people believe this. And so they are angry, and they do believe the narrative that has been pushed down their throats by mainstream media. So we need an alternative
yes,
media.
We need a speaker also that will completely shut down the DOJ, the DHS, and punish them for what they've done to us. And that involves 2 fiscal year budgets. Questions? Does John have a question?
Roger has a question.
Citizen Media News, Colonel Ivan. Out of that 150 congressional members, how many actually won? Or what percentage, you know? That Trump endorsed.
It was over 90%, I think 93% that he endorsed.
So he's got some power behind him.
Yep.
Yep, and
Absolutely.
courage is contagious. You know, cowardice is contagious, but so is courage. So, you know, hopefully, you know, it's hard to be the first one, it's hard to be the second one, but hopefully that will embolden other people to.
So here's all it takes. In order to buy time, if you will, to get this going, all we need is the same 5 members. Remember in January? If the same 5 members say, you know what, I'm only voting for a Speaker Trump. Well, the only opportunity for somebody to become a speaker then at that point, they have to get Democrat votes, right? So if they, it comes down to this. So the CCP first Republicans, and I'll name them, Don Bacons of the world, the Dan Newhouses of the world, the David Valadaos of the world, guess what? If they want to say, oh no, never Trump, well, let's have a discourse. Why don't we just showcase to the American public of why a Steve Scalise, and let's hear about what he's done and how he's going to be great for America. Let's showcase Jim Jordan on why he's going to be great for America, and then let's have a counter argument rebuttal of why those two may not be the best course of action. And let's do the same with the Donald Trump. And let's do the same thing, and let's embarrass Kevin McCarthy another time. Somebody put him forward so that he can be completely embarrassed yet another time. That needs to happen in public, not in closed session, which they're going to do later today.
Well, I would say I like what I've seen from Matt Gaetz lately. You know, I think that he's been emboldened and he's done what he feels is right, and
Absolutely.
he takes some flack from it. He's also not beholden to, you know, the big donors, and I think that, you know, he's
Much respect to him and the 8 that just actually voted to remove Kevin McCarthy. So let's list them. Eli Crane, Nancy Mace, wild card actually. We have Matt Rosendale, Bob Good, Andy Biggs. Who am I missing?
I wish I
Matt
could remember.
Gaetz, 6.
Yeah, there you go, Matt Gaetz, 6.
Mace, and there's one other one. I'll think of it.
Well, you've spoken about the people you don't want to be speaker. When a speaker gets elected, are there maybe 5 things that you demand that the speaker must do immediately?
Yes. So very first thing, well, by January 3rd, but immediately, I would say, immediately go ahead and take the political backlash and go ahead and have the House Admin Committee go ahead and release the tapes at the order of the Speaker. And if Brian Stahl wants to stop that because he's the chair of that committee, well, guess what? You're no longer the chair of the committee. How about Barry Loudermilk is now the chair of the Committee on House Administration and the Subcommittee on Oversight? Let's move on. That would be my number one thing, is that everything needs to be released as it relates to January 6th, because once that happens, the entire country is going to be like, oh, wow, we were just totally manipulated. What else did they manipulate us about? And that's when Elon Musk will have the top cover to go ahead and release Fauci files and everything related to the pandemic.
What's second?
Pandemic. So what's second? So I listed it in my Substack. It goes back to November of 2022, and it basically comes down to the 5 problems that need to be addressed through a speaker. Number 1, CCP systematically destroying the U.S. economy. How about fund a DOD not for wokeness purposes, but to go after the CCP? How about we go after the medical tyranny, which includes China, but also includes Big Pharma, and essentially removing any financial funding mechanisms and probably fines and pass legislation to create consequences for everyone that's been mutilated, destroyed, and murdered through these jabs. We're over 30,000 already. Big tech censorship. How about there's laws that punish for every instance of a First Amendment violation? And then 4, we just talked about it. And then the 2020 election, totally illegitimate. That needs to be addressed, and this is how we address it. The new speaker, thank you. I failed to mention this. The new incoming speaker needs to go back and think for themselves, wait, the January 6th joint session did not have a quorum. Interesting. Let's do a new one and present the evidence since January 6th to today of all of the illegal activities by the states, right? To object to them, hold a vote under that contingent election framework, and then determine who the president should be under the 12th Amendment, after objecting to at least Georgia, Wisconsin, Arizona, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Nevada, New Mexico, New Hampshire, and Nebraska. That's more electoral votes than needed to bring the illegitimate one below 270 that's squatting in the White House. That's it? No more questions? Did you have anything you wanted to add?
I don't think
Today's
I
birthday.
do. Tammy, happy birthday, baby. I love you. We love and
What
miss
would-
and remember
what
you
would-
always.
What was Ashley's favorite thing to do on her birthday? What flavor ice cream? What?
Well, Ashley was not a big cake eater, but we always made brownies. She would probably have a spaghetti dinner and be at home with her family and her animals.
And are you doing anything later today?
We are.
To
We'll be at the
remember
Capitol to lay
Ashley?
flowers on the steps of the Capitol. And then we will hold our vigil outside the DC jail as we do every night in a celebration of life and remembrance of Ashley.
I'll be there.
God bless.
God bless you, baby. All right.